Record is going. With that. Yes. Good. We're on record. Thank you for whoever jumped ahead of me on that. Okay, so we're in Cloud 9. We need to open our Cloud 9 interface. And we're just starting with a empty Cloud 9 interface. So the first part that they have us doing is we're going to go out and we're going to grab, using curl, an environment that we're going to be able to use to actually start building this. Oops. Click over here. And okay, so we just brought that, and you can see over here, it brought 3 different environments across. Now that we have those brought across, now what we're going to want to do is, in the lab, it has you looking through and exploring those. For the sake of time, when you do the lab, do that. What we're going to need to do first is we're going to go into the no container environment. We're going to install KOA. And then we're going to install the KOA router.
What did you paste into the environment?
Okay, so what I was doing is it's task 2.1. Well, the first thing I did is it was task, 1, is I was preparing the environment. So in preparing the environment, there's a curl statement. And that curl statement is dropping in all of the files necessary, and that set up our file structure over here in the upper right. The number 1 no container, the number 2 containerized monolith, and the number 3 containerized microservices. So it brought all the initial file structures in for us, the JSON file structures. The second thing that I did was I was down in task 2. And in that one, then we're going into, we did a change directory into the no container directory. So we went into this file structure up here. And then we're installing a KOA application and a KOA router, which are related to our containerized services. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we're jumping into task 2.2. And actually, we're jumping to 2.3, sorry. We're going to validate that it actually is running properly. So we're going to start our application, so npm start. And we're going to run a curl statement. But we're going to open a secondary terminal tab. So we're going to click on the plus symbol here. That'll open a second terminal. So new terminal. And then we're going to do a local host. We're just doing a curl. So what we're doing is we're querying the system to see who are the local hosts. And then when we go back to our first one, we can see that it actually ran against it. And we can see here that we had a get statement that ran against our users, and it brought back 3 users. And then here's the data for those 3 users. And then we can do a second statement where we're running another curl statement. And this one we're going to pull back just user 4, and it brought back user 4, which was Jake Storm. So we just did a query against the database. And then we're going to look at the threads part of it. And that pulled back correctly. And then we want to look at just one of those. So we're going to just do a separate query for thread 1. That pulled back just the first line. So the application itself is in a functioning state, which we have to validate before we move forward, because if it's not functioning at this point, when we containerize it and then we break it apart, nothing will be working. So this is just sort of a validation check. Okay, we're going into task 3. We're going to containerize the beast. So what we want to do is we are going to go hang on a second here. Yep, so Step 3.1 is really just talking you through what it's going to be doing. And what the differences are between the no container and the containerized versions. So we're going to jump to task 3.2, provisioning the repository. And now we need to go to Elastic Container Registry. And so Elastic Container Registry is going to be another service. Okay, we want to open up that in a new tab. Hi, Oliver. That's okay.
I was gonna be online, but my power went out.
That's, you,
I can't catch a break.
no, you can't. Okay. Well, this one's going to be a fast lap, so I got 300 steps to get through it. I'm on 26, so hang on for the ride. Okay. So we're in Elastic Container Registry, and what we're going to need to do in Elastic Container Registry is we want to create a repository. So we're going to click on Get Started. And we're going to call this repository MB Repo. And you can see here it has the path of what the repository is in front of it. And we're going to just scroll down and say create repository. So what we're doing is we're basically creating a shell. We're creating a shell where we're going to put a container into. So now we're going to push stuff into that. And so what we're going to do first is we're going to go back to Cloud 9. And in so we're task 3.3, step 29. The first part of it says is that we need to upgrade our user. Most likely when you run this, you're going to get and say the user is already upgraded. So let me clear this first. And we are in the right-hand pane. Actually, I was supposed to cancel out of that. Sorry. Okay. So what we're doing is the first part, we're doing a pip3 install AWS CLI upgrade user. And it should come back and say the user's already been upgraded. They're already up to date. Cool. And we don't need to worry about upgrading the version of pip because the version of pip is just fine. Yes, it is. Okay. And then we're exporting the path that we just created for all those new versions. So that's just making sure that we have everything at the current version before we move forward. Okay, so now we're going to go back to ECR. And now what we want to do is we're going to do what's called viewing push commands. So we're going to select our repo. And then we're going to do view push commands. And so what this is going to do is this is going to give us a script of how we can take a instance and turn it into a container. Because first we created a shell. So with the Elastic Container Registry, the first step we did was create a shell. Now what we're going to do is we're going to actually take what is in our directory structure in Cloud 9 and transfer that into that shell. So the first part we need to do is we need to get our authentication. So that's step 1 here in our push commands. And we want to make sure we're under the Mac OS/Linux section. We're currently on step 32 of task 3.2. So we're grabbing the push command, the top one, going to Cloud 9, and pasting that in. And it should log in successfully. So we've logged into our containerized application. Now what we need to do is we need to start moving some of our file structure here from our containerized monolith over into this container that we just built. So now we're going to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But first we need to change directories. So we're going to change directories into that containerized monolith. So now we're in the containerized monolith directory. Just clear that so you can see it a little easier. And then we're going to go back to ECR. We're going to go to the second command, which the Docker build the repo. So that is going to build our repository. Make sure you get the period at the end. That starts building our repository. Once that gets done, we're going to go back and we're going to go to the next one, which is going to tag our images. That one just comes back to a prompt once it runs successfully. And the last one is going to finalize the repository itself. Okay, if everything works properly, when we click close, we do a refresh, we should have a latest showing up. So what we've done is we've just taken our whole file structure and pushed it into this containerized repository in Elastic Container Registry. Okay. So now we're jumping down to task 4. We want to deploy this monolithic ECS. So now we have a container, but we want to make it so that we can actually use this container. So we've created an object, but now we need to make that object actually visible to the outside world, because right now it's just living in its own little isolated box. So what we want to do is we want to throw a load balancer in front of it. And so we're going to have to go create a load balancer. So we want to go to EC2. Open that in a new tab. And we want to go down and we are going to. Ooh, actually, sorry, I got off task. I was jumping ahead. Yeah, sorry. We want to go back to the Elastic Container Registry. We want to go to Elastic Container Services. So we're going to go to Services. We want to go to Elastic Container Service. Open in a new tab. Right. Because right now we don't have a cluster yet. So this is one, make sure that you have it selected, that you aren't on the new experience up here on the left, that you have it selected for the old experience. Otherwise, you're going to have some issues at this part. So make sure that it is not selected for the new experience up here in the left. Then we want to go to clusters. You're going to create a cluster. Because otherwise, what will happen is you will not get this step if you go into the new environment. The new environment will not give you the option to select a cluster template. And we want an EC2 Linux plus networking. Select next step. We are going to give it a cluster name. It's going to be MB ECS cluster. Okay, it's going to be an on-demand instance. It's going to be a T2 micro. Number of instances, we're going to say that we want this to spin up with 2 instances. And then we're going to need to create a VPC. And so we're going to create a VPC, and it's going to be a 10.32.0.0/16 as our CIDR block. And then it's going to complain because it's going to go, your subnets aren't in the same CIDR block. And we're like, yes, we know, we're going to fix that. So we're going to do, first subnet is 10.32.0.0/24. And second one is going to be 10.32.1.0.24. Yep. Career fair is next week. It is the construction career fair today. A couple people got confused about that one. They did not send out good documentation to let people know what was going on.
I went down like.
So the under security group, we want to create a new security group to be selected. We'll leave it at that port 80. And we'll scroll down and we will create.
Mine still has an error for the subnet 1 and subnet 2.
When you're okay, make sure that they are, so it should be 10.32.0.0/24 for subnet 1 and 10.32.1.0/24 for subnet 2. And the CIDR block should be 103200/16.
I got it now, thank you.
Okay, yeah, no problem. We got a second while the stack is building. You're doing good keeping up with me because I'm moving fast. Okay, we got a little bit of a pause here while it's building. And you can see here it's doing cloud formation stack. So it's building a stack in the background. And so last week we built our first stack. So what it's doing is it's doing all the provisioning of that VPC for us. So we just told it, okay, we need a VPC in this subnet range with the, or this CIDR range with these two subnets, go build it. And it just did for us. Okay. Now that that is built, now we can view our cluster. Our cluster is active. Good deal. Okay, so now that we have at that point, we can look at our EC2 instances. And the instances are starting to show up. Okay, so everything is working on that. It'll eventually shortly have two. There they go. Okay, so we have two instances being spun up because we said that it needed two. So we're going to go back to tasks. And we don't have any tasks currently deployed. So now what we need to do is we need to create a task for the application container image. So we're down to task 4.2. So we're going to go to ECS. So we are in, yep, we're in ECS. You want to go into task definitions over here on the left. We are going to create a new task definition. We want to make sure we select EC2. Next step. We're going to give our task definition a name. This is going to be MB-task. Task role, aren't going to worry about. And we're going to go down. Size, we're going to add a container.
Where was this one?
Okay, so let me go back. Okay, let me cancel out and I'll come back in.
Sorry, thank you.
That's okay. So we're in the ECS window. We're going to task definitions.
I got it now. I just didn't know how you got to the definition button.
Yeah, no, I went quick. So we're going to create a new task definition. We need to select EC2. Next step. Task definition name is MB-task, just line 67. Okay, and then we're going to go all the way down to add a container. And the container name we're going to add is MB-container. And then we want the image URI of the application container, which I didn't actually copy. Oh, no. Okay, so we're going to have to go back and find that. So we need to go back to our Elastic Container Registry. And what we need to do is we need to copy the URI here. So this is Elastic Container Registry. And then the instance here has a URI that we need to copy. And then we're going back in, and then that's where we're pasting in that image. Because what it is that's the path of how to get there. Now that we've put that in, make sure I just got myself off task here. Yep, I did. Okay. We need to do port mapping and everything else. Okay, so we got our image in, our container name, and our image. Our hard limit is going to be 256. Port mapping is going to be to port 3000. And it's TCP. And then we'll click on add the container. You'll see here that it's adding our container in. Then we'll scroll down. Don't worry about this failed to retrieve app mesh warning. We aren't worrying about that. And we're going to create it. Task definition successfully created. Good deal. So now we're jumping down to task 4.3, creating an application load balancer. This is the one where I jumped ahead before. So now we're going to EC2. And we're going to go to load balancers. We're going to create a load balancer. We want to create a application load balancer. Our load balancer's name is going to be MB-load balancer. Keep the default for internet facing and IPv4. For our VPC, we need to select our /32. So what we want is our 10.32.0.0/16 for VPC. You want to select both of the subnets, and so we're selecting both of the availability zones, and that'll get us both our subnets that we set up. Okay, for security settings, let's see. For security groups, we want to assign a security group. So we want to select an existing security group. And we want the EC2 container security group. Okay, for listening and routing, we're going to create a target group. Brings us into a new window. It'll be for instances. Our target group name is MLB load balancer target group. For protocol, we're going to leave that. For VPC again, we need to make sure we're in the right one. What we need to have is the .10.32. As long as it's the 10.32.0.0/16, we're good on the VPC. For health checks, we want to go down to advanced health checks. We're going to change our healthy threshold down to 2 and our interval down to 6. So what we're doing is we're saying that keep it at 2 and we just want 2. Okay, then we'll select next. Then on the registered target screen, we will just say create a target group. Good to go, created our target group. Okay, so now we go back to our load balancer, do a refresh, and then we're going to select that target group we just created. And then we'll go down and we're going to create our load balancer. Okay, and then we can view our load balancer. And we should see that our load balancer is provisioning. And we're just waiting till that goes active. So we clicked on, sorry, I didn't describe what I was doing. Okay, so I selected, is it popping up that? Our load balancer, clicked on it, scrolled down to the lower part, went to security. And then we want to look for the security group associated with our load balancer. Okay, so we want to select that. Nope, I didn't want that. I wanted. That's what I wanted. Security group ID. Because we're going to need that in the next step. Drop that into a text editor. We just have that security group ID because we'll need that later. Okay, so now we want to go back to inbound rules on our security group. Or our other security group. Get a couple of these extra windows shut down. Okay, so I want to go back to load balancers. Selecting our load balancer. Oh, sorry. Actually, should have gone back to sales page. Sorry, I was in the right place. So we need to stay at the security group page, and we wanted to edit our inbound rules. And what we want to do is we're going to add a rule. And it's going to be a custom TCP. Port range is going to be 31,000 to 61,000. And then the security group that we had copied earlier, we're going to paste that in because that's who it's going to be associated with. Then we want to save that rule. Sorry, I got myself a little off track there. So then we should have it that our inbound rules, we should have two of them. We should have a custom TCP and a HTTP. Okay, now we're getting to the deploying the monolithic ECS service, which is task 4.4. So we're up to step 95, so we're almost a third of the way there. So we're going to go to Elastic Container Service now. So I'm going to close everything but Cloud9 and ECS. So we're back to Elastic Container Service. We want to go to task definitions. We're going to go into our MB task that we created earlier. And we'll select that. Go to actions. We're going to create a service, an EC2 service. Service name is MB ECS service. It is a replica. The number of tasks associated with this replica is going to be 1. Oops, what did it not like? Do I have a space in front? Yep, I got a space in front. Got to be careful about when you're copying and pasting. Sometimes if you get a space in there, it'll get cranky. So give it a service name. Number of tasks is 1. Down to next step. And then we're going to use the application load balancer. We are going to create a new IAM role associated with this. It's going to use the load balancer we had already created, so it already populated that with the MB-load balancer. And then the container port is there. We're just going to say add to the load balancer. And then we want to have the listener port We'll go to port 80 HTTP. Target group name, and this is where we want to have it. We're going to select the MB load balancer target group that we created. Down to next step. Don't worry about the auto scaling. Next step. And create the service. Should get green across the board. There we go. Okay, so now we can go down and view the services. Now we should have, it's in a pending state. Fresh, activating. And it's in a running state. Okay, so we're up and running. So we're down to task 4.5, testing the containerized monolith. So what we've done is we've taken the application, we've containerized it, put it into ECS, and now we put it in front of a load balancer, so we should actually be able to get to the site itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to EC2. So we need to go to services, open EC2 in another tab. We need to go to our load balancer. Really annoying that keeps showing up. Select our load balancer. And we're going to get to its DNS name. Drop that into our handy dandy text editor. We're going to need that later, but we also want to open up a new tab. Paste that in. And if everything is working right, it should come up and say, ready to receive request. So we're talking through our load balancer, and the load balancer is then seeing the containerized application before it, or behind it. So now what we want to do is make sure that all the various components that we're expecting to run are working. So the first thing we're going to want to do is do a /API. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do the similar things to what we did at the command line. Okay, so API is ready to receive a request. Cool. Now what we're going to do is see if we can see users. So it's API/users. Okay, and there's our users that we had seen before. And then if we want to just grab one of those users, we can do at the end of it. And we're going to select how many users that we want to do. We're going to pull back the first user. And that pulled back our first user's data. Okay, so things are working right. So now what we want to do is we want to see if the threads part of our application is working properly. So we'll type /API/threads. Now we can see the various threads for the application, that those are actually working properly. Salut. Goodness. And then lastly, we're going to look at the specific thread. So we're doing /API/post/in-thread number 2. Okay, and so that pulled up the thread for that, thread 2 relating to that. So everything is actually working properly in our containerized. So what we did is we took an application and we containerized that application. So that's the easy part. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take that monolithic application that we containerized and refactor it into microservices. For the sake of this one, we're going to just refactor it into 3 microservices. Where you're breaking apart, instead of having one big application, you have smaller chunks so that it's optimized. And then you can scale it based on where it's getting hit rather than having the whole application have to scale. Okay, so we're going to go back to Cloud9. We're going to leave the that website up because we're going to go there later. And we're going to need to. So we're going to be now working in the containerized microservice section. And they have you walk through and sort of check out the files in there. We won't do that for sake of time. But now what we're going to do is we're going to do similar to what we just did to containerize once, but we're going to do it 3 times for the 3 different services, the users, the threads, and the post. We're going to break those into those 3 sections. So the first thing we need to do is oh, it has us jump back to Elastic Container Registry. Okay, sorry, got ahead of myself. So we don't currently have Elastic Container Registry open, so we're going to jump there. So go to Elastic Container Registry. Currently, we have 1 repository. Since we're going to be creating 3 new repositories, we're going to have to create, or 3 new containers. Each of those will need its own individual repository. So we're going to create a users repository first. And this is where it's going to get repetitive. So I'll describe the first one and then I'll move a little faster for the second 2. So we're doing the users repo. And then we just create a repository. And create another one. That's going to be our threads repo. Get the repository, and our third one is going to be the post repo. And again, these are just empty buckets basically in our Elastic Container Registry to then build our container into. So now we have that in our ECR, we have 3 separate repositories. Oops. Yeah, I wanted to go up there. Oh, where did I go? Oh, okay, sorry. So we have private repositories. So we just created 3 and then we had our initial. So now we have a total of 4 repositories out there. We have our MB users repo, MB threads repo, the original MB repo, and the MB post repo. So now what we need to do is we're going to sort of rinse and repeat what we did before to actually get those services. So we're going to start by changing our directory in Cloud9. We're going to jump over to Cloud9 because we want to get into this containerized microservice directory structure. So that's where we're going to be working. So we're moving into that directory structure. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do that multi-step process, and we're going to start with our users repo. So we're going to go into our users repo, select it, and we want to view the push commands. So we don't need to do this first one because we're already logged in. So we don't need to log in a second time. So what we need to do is we're going to do these bottom 3 steps. So grab the first step, over to Cloud9. And so that's going to build the users repo. While that's running, we're going to grab the next one, which is going to tag it. And then we're going to grab the third one, which is going to then push it. Okay, so that did the users repo. So then what we need to do is rinse and repeat. So we did users. Now we need to do threads. Do push commands. We'll do 2, 3, and 4. So we'll grab step 2. Grab step 3. And grab step 4. Okay. So we've done users, we've done threads, and now we just need to do post. Grab the first one. Sorry, second one. Third one, which is tagging it. And then the fourth one again, that actually does the push. And then how to verify that everything actually worked properly. When we go back and we look at our repositories, if we open each repository, we should see a latest showing up. Okay, so our three repositories we created, we have the post repo, threads repo, and users repo. All three of those have been provisioned. All three of those now have their file structures moved over from our Cloud9 environment. So that brought us all the way down to except I botched it. Ha. Okay, I did one little thing wrong and I just did it, so I have to go back. So what I did is I did not change my directory structure. So what I did is I put the wrong stuff in the wrong places. So what I did is everything was done in users. So what we can do to fix that, which is actually pretty easy. What I need to do is, it's what I get for not following the directions exactly. So users is done and users is good, but we have the wrong data in threads. So what we need to do is change our directory to the threads micro-directory. Go back to ECR, go back to threads, go back to push commands. And the nice thing about this is we just are going to put a different environment in there. And that's part of why it ran so fast. No description. Okay, did successfully build, good. I knew if I tried moving too fast, I would make some sort of silly error like that. Well, it's the, I'm trying to be very conscious on time on this one because it is, there's a lot. We're about halfway through. Okay. So we got through that. Now what we want to do is we are going to do the post. So now I need to move to the post directory. So we're changing directors again because we're currently in threads and we want to be in the post directory. And then what we'll do is we'll repeat the process for post. So we need to go to repository. I'm going to go to post, view push, go to step 2, grab that. Should throw a little error saying, hey, what's the deal here? There it goes, then does the removing it and then fixing it. Okay, good. Step 3. And then step 4. Okay, so now if we go back and look at ours, so we have a latest and then we have an untagged. Let's see what timestamps we got. 1046. Yep. So latest is showing 1049, which is what we want. Awesome. Okay. So little diversion there, but we got it built. We got it fixed. So now what we can do is we can go down to task 6 and deploy the containerized microservices. So what we did is we built a container for each of these 3 microservices. Now what we have to do is put a load balancer in front of them. Well, we already have a load balancer, so what we're going to do is we're going to first create some task definitions for each of these microservices. So we're going to go to our ECR console. I'm going to go to ECR, last container registry. Oh, this is the one where there's an error. Okay. We don't want to be in the last ECR. We want to be in the ECS. Okay, so this is one, there is an error in the lab documentation on line 192. It's saying in navigation panel of the ECR console, choose task definitions. Well, task definitions isn't in ECR, it's in ECS. So just be aware, step 192 should be ECS, not ECR. So then we go into task definitions, and we are going into create a new task definition. We're going to select EC2 again. This is a repeat of what we did before. Select next, except we're going to have to do it 3 times. So this is going to be the MB users task. And then we're going to go down to add a container. The container name is going to be the MB users container. And then we want the URL from the didn't actually copy those. So the previous step where we were supposed to copy the URLs. Okay, so we want to be in the ECR. And okay, so this is where, so each of these will have a URI associated with them. So what we want to do is copy the URI. So this is the post URI. Put that in our text editor. Threads URI. Also do that in our text editor. What was that? That was friends, I believe. Yep. And then we want the users. Okay, so then we need those coming up. Now we go back to ECS. So here's where we're doing the users container, and then we go back to, and we need the users path for the file structure. Pasting that in. Limit again is going to be 256. Port mapping is again going to be port 3000. Place, sorry, I want to make sure I don't get off script again here. Yep, and then just add. Then we scroll down and hit create. Okay, so it was one task. Now what we need to do is we are going to create another task. We have to do one for each of them. So now we need to do one for threads. Select EC2. Next step. This is going to be MB-threads task for a name. Down to container, add a container. Container name, MB-threads container. And we need to go to our text editor again to pull back the threads URI, which is this one. That in there. Go. That's not where I wanted it. Did I do? There we go. That's where it was supposed to be. That's their 256. Import 3000. Then add. And create. And we need to go back to our task definitions. Now we need to create the last one, which is for post. select EC2. Yep. MB post task is the name. Going down to add a container. MB post container. Back to our.
Mine won't let me create the threads task.
Won't let you create the threads task.
It says that the name is invalid.
Check if there's a space in front of it or something funky in the naming convention.
There is not. I've
Okay.
retyped it a few times.
Hang on a second here. Let me just get that one. Okay. So which step are you at? You are at.
Just the name. It won't let me name it.
Okay, so
It
you're
says-
creating a new task definition,
Yeah.
and then you selected EC2.
Yeah.
Okay, and then next. And then at this part up here where you're naming it.
Yeah. It just says, I hit create and it says unable to create task definition, container.name contains invalid characters.
Oh, try rather than copying and pasting, just typing it in.
And that's what I have been doing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know. The other ones worked fine. I guess this one just isn't.
I'd say just hit cancel and then try going back in clean.
Okay.
And it could be just the user interface just got squirrely for a second.
Okay.
Especially if the other ones worked. Oh, and my MB users task actually is not defined properly. Let's see if I can fix that. No, I'm not going to be able to. Edit tags. Nope. I'm gonna have to just. Oh, actually, I can remake the task. I realize one of my tasks isn't named properly, which is going to cause me issues. So I just need to. Actually, since it's misnamed, it won't get called properly, so I'll just create a new task with the right name. One of those where you're moving fast and you make stupid mistakes. Okay, so it was task, not task. And add a container to that one. This container. Repository name for users. Add. Because all we're doing at this point is we have tasks that are associated, but we aren't actually tying them to anything. And that's why I wasn't too worried about creating a task that we aren't going to actually use. And now we have them all, that they have the proper naming conventions. And this one is just going to be an orphan. Okay, so we got our task created. Did your task work on the rebuild?
Yes, it did.
Okay, good. With this GUI, occasionally, if it glitches, usually it's just cancel out and come back in and it works. It's just one of those things that I've noticed. Okay, so next we're going to be going into task stuff. No, we already just did that. Got the post. Okay, so now we're going to be going in task 6.2. We're going to be going to the application load balancer. So what we need to do is create target groups for the user microservices that we've created. So, and we want to go to EC2. I have that up. No, I don't. Okay, so we'll just go that way to EC2. And we want to go to target groups. And we're going to create a target group. Leave it as the default instances. First one we're going to create, because again, we have to create 3 of these, like everything, we're going to be doing it 3 times. The first one is going to be the MLB users target group. And we want to make sure our VPC is our /32 to make sure that it's using the right VPC. Protocol version HTTP1. Advanced health checks. We're going to have the threshold at 2. We're going to have the interval at 6. Going to select next. And then we're going to create a target group. We're going to do the same thing for our threads. So we're going to create a target group. This one's going to be the MLB LB threads target group. Make sure we have the right VPC. Advanced health 2 and 6. Next. And create the target group. And then lastly, the post. So create a target group. MLB post. Get the right VPC. Advanced health check. 2 health threshold and interval of 6. Next. And create the target group. Okay, now we need to create listeners for the load balancers so that they actually are looking at these containers when they're actually moving the traffic. So what we need to do is we're going to go to the MB load balancers. So we're going to go to our load balancers. Under MB load balancer. And then what we want to do is we are going to go to the listeners tab. Select that. And then under actions, we want to manage rules. And this is one that the directions are a little weird because they say view/edit rules, but the actual GUI says manage rules. So we want to go to manage rules. You're wanting to have a window look like this. If the window doesn't come like this, you didn't click on the right part. Okay, so now what we want to do is we are going to create some rules. So what we want to do is we're going to click on the plus symbol up here. Insert a rule. And then these are going to be conditional rules. So we're going to click on add a condition. It's going to be a path-based rule. So if a user selects /API, and I think I got an extra space in there. Yep. /users with anything behind it, we're going to direct them and we're going to forward them to a different container. So we want to actually put them, and then we're going to be pointing them to our MLB users target group. Okay, so that's our first one. So now what we want to do is we're going to insert another rule, path. And this one's going to be our threads. So if the API happens to be threads, we're going to have them then we're going to forward them. And we're going to go to the threads target group. Save that one. And then we're going to do the same thing for posts. So insert a rule. Path. Post. Forward to. And that'll be our post target group. So what we've created is we have if then statements. So if the path is API post, forward to the post target group. If the path is API users, to the users target group. If it's threads, to the threads target group. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have a extra rule. We have post, threads, and users. Okay, those are all good. So we're going to insert another rule, which we wanted. Now we're going to do sort of a catch-all one. So we're going to say if it's just a slash or if it's slash API. Oops, help if I could type. Then we're going to forward to the users target group and save. So now we've added 4 rules. And then we have our original rule still also. Then what we're going to want to do is on the last one, we're going to change it. So what we're going to do is we're going to edit this one. So we're going to select the pencil, edit that one, and we're going to get rid of the forward. Instead, we're going to do a action. It's going to be a fixed return response. And basically, we're going to say, okay, this is going to be a 200 error code. And what it'll actually throw back at them is that that was an invalid response. So if they go to anywhere other than those specific ones that we set, we are then going to throw back an error. So we should have a total of 5 rules that we've put together. And once we've actually successfully done that, it'll come back and say it was updated. This is a little different. In the documentation, it says choose update. Well, there wasn't an update, just choose. Okay, so now what we have is we're going to deploy the 3 microservices to the cluster as ECS services. We're down to task 6.3. So we're going to go to Elastic Container Services. I go back to EC2. Okay, so go back here. Actually, we're going to go to Services, Elastic Container Service. And clusters. Select our cluster. And now we're going to create some additional clusters. So we're going to create. And the type is going to be EC2. Service name is going to be MB users ECS service. The number of tasks is going to be 1. Choose the next step. We're going to do an application load balancer. And by default, it found our load balancer. Our container port name. We'll select add to load balancer. And hang on here. And that's right, load balancer. Okay, so container, we're going to select add to load balancer. We want the 80. Target group name, gonna be, first one we're gonna do is users. Next step. And next step. And create the service. And then, as you probably guessed, we get to do it 2 more times, once for threads and once for post. Okay, so we're going to go back to clusters. Going to create a service. Make sure we select EC2. It's going to be the MB threads ECS service. Number of tasks is going to be 1. Replica. Select next step. Application load balancer. Add a load balancer. For 80. Target group name for this one is going to be the threads group. Next. Next. Great. Okay, back to view services. Create one more. Make sure you select EC2. First name for the last one is going to be our post service. Replica, number of tasks is 1. Step. Application load balancer. Add to load balancer. Target group on this one is going to be posts. Next, next, and create the service. Okay, so now we go back to view services. Now what we should have seeing there is that you should see that you have desired is 1, and then in just a second, all of them should say that the actual running state is 1 also. So everything is active, everything is in a good place. So now what we want to do is we want to validate our deployment. So one of the problems we have is we have 4 containers out there, but we really only want 3 behind our load balancer. So what we want to do is that original MBS ECS service that we created, we need to edit that. So what we want to do is we're going to select it, action, oops, update. And then we want to select its number of tasks and turn it to 0. So what we're saying is that only have, yes, we like you, but you aren't going to actually do any work for us. So update the service. Okay, so now that it has 0, what it will do is its running state shortly will switch from 1 to 0, and it won't have any nodes actually running. You need to wait till the running count. Yep, running count is now 0, so there's no services being provided by the original container that we built first part of the lab. So, okay, so now moment of truth is we're down to step 282. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our original page. And if things play nice, we should be able to select the /API 300.
20 steps away.
Okay. So /API is working properly. Good first step. So now what we want to do is we want to check to see if the other step is working. So we're going to go /users. So it's API /users. And we got a not found. Bummer. That's not good. Okay, we'll go and troubleshoot that in a second. Let's see if we got, or is it just straight users? Yep, it was API users. Okay, so we got an error there. Let's see if we can get to the API post threads. That worked. Okay, good. So threads is working. And so it's for some reason our users is not playing nice. Post. Or API threads. That's interesting. Okay, so the XYZ came up with the invalid request, so that's worked. So what we have is we have something, wow, we got just a little bit of time to troubleshoot that. So what's not playing, so our API worked. So that's ready to receive requests. So that's good. So we got step 283. We got our yes. Then the next part was adding users to that. And it was a lowercase. That's the one not working. Okay. Don't need Cloud9 open. And it would be the at the container registry. It would be our service. So it's most likely our task. Oh, okay, so we're going to EC2. And what we want to do is we want to look at our load balancers. And we want to look at our listener rules. Okay, post users. Okay, so where things are squirrely is in our rules for our load balancer of actually mapping things to the right place. So this is where some troubleshooting is going to need to come into play on this one to figure it out. Our API, so our first rule, or actually our fourth rule is working fine, which is the path is / or API. It's going there. Request otherwise not routed, that one's coming back okay. Our threads, users, and post all seem to be squirrely. Interesting. So post in threads is working. And user 1 is working. No, it's not. Okay, it was just faking me out. The post in thread. Okay, so it's looking like this is where things are squirrely and I have to figure out what's up. So post. To that actually looks fine. So is it that the servers themselves are not presenting what they're supposed to? Okay, so we're running out of time. So what I'm going to do is if you can get to this point and have at least one of the pages actually functional, like in my case, it was the API actually came up right. I'll give you full credit for it. So if you get one of the three for the final step going, rather than having you, because there's an error out there somewhere that I made, and I'm going to see if I can dig into that. But since we're running out of time, I'm not going to be able to solve that before we're out of time. So as long as you can get the API ready to receive requests on the new broken apart piece, I'll give you full credit on this one because this is a beast. And it's definitely one of the more complex moving parts compared to most everything else that we've done and will do for this semester. Any questions? Oh, attendance code. You guys might want that before we all disappear. Let me get that up. Sorry about that. Mayfly, M4Y, capital FLY.
Crazy.
Okay, any questions before we go? Oh, Spencer, do you need to remove the trailing slash on it? That didn't seem to fix it. Did yours work? Since you were following along? Okay, so I'm